Hello everyone, it's Mr. G and I'm here to teach you about methods today. So, a method is basically it's a block of code that just does something. Usually it's something pretty simple. It accomplishes, one thing, and it's best to make methods whenever it's code that's going to be repeated multiple times. So, um, basically, and that block of code always goes within a class pertaining to that class. So I know that probably didn't make a whole lot of sense, but I'll show you. So let's get rid of some of this here. Let's keep the animal. So we'll do that. All right, now, but we're gonna go to our animal class, and just as a recap, we created 4 fields in our animal class last time, and the fields were 2 strings, an int, and a boolean. And these are just variables that each instance or occurrence of this animal class is going to have. So um, let's just talk about methods now. So we have the ability to do different things, and basically for the animal class or any class, animals included, a method will basically act as the behavior of said object. So, what are some things that animals do? Well, they eat, um, they they can move around, um, they sleep, things like that. So, we'll just do eat and sleep. How about that? All right, so I'm gonna type public void and we'll do eat first. Now, when you make your method, and I'll explain what all these words mean and just the whole setup here. Um, we're not going to get too much into public right now, but just know that it needs to be public for now. Void is, or the second word here, is what we're going to call the return type. And I'll talk about that. And then we have our method name. In other programming languages, their methods are usually called functions, but we're going to call them methods because that's what they're called in Java. And then we have our parentheses here, and they're empty, and that's fine. But all methods need to have those things. If you put something in the parentheses, then um, that's information that the method is going to take in order to execute. So I'll show you an example of that as well. But let's get this method coded right now. Um, all we're just gonna say with this method or do with this method is just print to the console, this animal ate something and is full, yum or something. So our print command is system dot out dot print line, and we're gonna say this animal ate some yummy food. Okay, and let's do another method here. Public void sleep. So again, public void, then the name of the method sleep. The name of the method should be something that tells you what the method does. And the naming conventions are similar to or the same as variables. So the first letter of the first word is lowercase, and all other first letters of every word are capitalized. We don't use spaces. If you want to use a space, you would do, an underscore or something, but uh, you don't use spaces. So same thing here. Get our print statement going, and we'll just do some Z's in alternate uh, capitalization there. All right, and that's it. So we'll save that class, and then we'll go back to our main class. Now remember, the main class has the main method where all the code is executed from. This main method is a method. It's just a special method that all Java programs have, and it's needed to execute. So we're gonna do, so anytime you want to access a field, or this is kind of going back to classes and objects, but anytime you want to access a field or a method from a particular object, in this case it's our animal object, you need to type in the variable name and then put a dot. So just like last time, these four variables come up, but if you look a little bit further down, you see the eat method here. So we're gonna get that one and then do the sleep one, which is down here. So we'll do both of those and we'll execute it. So what do you think is gonna happen when I execute this code? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it and then I'll run the code. All right, so here we go. What I expect is for the eat method, it's going to print this to the console, and then for the sleep method, it's going to print that to the console. So let's see. And down here in the console, let me zoom this in a little bit. In the print console, or in the console, this animal ate some yummy food. Is that not what we typed in our eat method? We told the compiler to print this string out. Remember, it's a string, so we have to use our double quotes. And the same thing for the sleep method here. We told it to print out some Z's, so the animal is sleeping. And that's exactly what it did. So that's pretty much what I expected. Okay, so that's the basics of methods, but it can get a little more complicated. So say you wanted, we'll keep this eat method here, but you wanted to specify what the animal ate. Say, you had a string of something that it would eat, but you wanted to use the eat method again. The cool thing about Java is you can do what's called method, was it overloading? Basically, you can create multiple methods by the same names, but there has to be some difference in the parameters or the information that we take in prior to executing the method. So we type in the exact same thing, except we would put in something in these parentheses now. Now, right now there's an error because right now we have the same method, exactly the same. It's no different other than what's inside the block right now. Java doesn't like that. So we have to make it different somehow. So on this second method here, we're going to take in some information. We're going to take in a string and uh, and we're going to call this thing eaten. Okay, now the error went away because now it's different. This one we're taking in some information. On this one we're not. So on this one we will. I forgot my T. We will say this animal, or actually we'll do dot print 8, and then we're going to leave a space here, and then we're going to do a print line, and we're going to put thing eaten. Okay, and then yeah, I'm satisfied with that. So here on this method, we specify what was eaten by the animal, and then we're going to print this animal ate. We're going to print this animal ate, and then we're going to print whatever that thing was that was eaten. Now, if you notice, I left a space here after the E in 8. So when these two things come together, because remember, this method does not skip a line. So it's going to print this, the output of this, on the same line as the output of this. So we skipped the line, or sorry, we left the space there so we can just plug that right on in. And so now, if we go back to our main method and type animal.eat, now you see there are two options here. We're going to take the second option now. I guess the animal woke up hungry, and now we have to specify what it ate. If we don't, it'll default to the other one, but we actually want to do that. Now remember, it takes in a string, so we have to put whatever that is. It has to be a string, or we have to put it in double quotes. So let's say the animal ate grass. Okay. Well, now when we run it, this animal ate some yummy food. That's the output of the first eat method. Then we do the sleep method. We call that method, and we get that, the Z's. And then on this last method, the last eat method, the one where we specified what it ate, this animal ate grass. Okay? And it's as simple as that. We take in some information here, and we can use that information within the method. This is what we would call a local variable here, because this is a variable. And this thing eaten can take in any string. So that information can change. It can be grass, it can be wood, it can be bugs, it can be whatever. It could be humans. You know, that could be anything, and it can change. This thing eaten, we can, um, let's do this. We can change the value of it here if we wanted to. And no matter what we put in, it's going to say bug because we changed it to bug. Now, in this case, that makes no sense, so we're not going to do that. But it just goes to show you the flexibility of variables. All right, so that's pretty cool. I think, with that little bit of information, you guys can see how, how powerful that is. If you had 10 different animals and you went to each one of them and put in something different in their eat method, then you would get 10 different outputs. So I think that's pretty cool. Now there's one more special kind of method that we need to discuss, and those are called constructors. So what a constructor is it's a special method that tells Java how to create your objects for that class. So now, not every class needs a constructor if you don't need special instructions for it. For this animal class, we have not used the constructor yet, but we were still able to make an animal object and access not only its methods but its fields. So, but it's a special method, and what you would do is you can put public here. Um, you don't have to, but I'm gonna do it. Public and the name of the class exactly as it appears up here. And then you put your parentheses. All methods have parentheses. Now, instead of a semicolon here, you would use a curly brace, and then you hit enter. And in Eclipse or pretty much any software like this, it'll do the second curly brace for you. So in this method, in this constructor, so here, let's do this. Just so we can have a little bit of notes for ourselves here. All right, so the constructor, it'll tell Java what to do with this object. So we can have it to where we can set something by default. So we can say has eyes equals true. Okay, and each animal that is created, this has eyes variable will automatically be set to true. If you want a default value, that's the way to go. Um, Also, in the same way that we were able to make two eat methods, you can have multiple constructors. But just like with the methods, it has to be different. If we do this, it's going to give us an error. So we have to change something about it. So we're going to take in, um, let's take in a Boolean. Notice we're putting the data type, and we're going to call it, Okay, now this constructor is a bit different because it's going to set this has eyes variable to whatever we're passing in here with the eyes variable. So this can be true or this can be false, but whatever it is, that's what this has eyes field is going to be set to. So this is more of a default animal, and this is more specialized. And you can make as many constructors as you want, so long as they're different. You can set each one of the variables in the constructor. Oftentimes, you will set, all of the variables of an object in the constructor, or um, taking them in as parameters. So let's save that, and then now we can make another animal here. Now, just to prove to you that this is working, that this will automatically be true, we can print out the value of the has eyes. So animal2 dot has eyes, and I guarantee you that this is going to print true because that's what we set it to be by default. And that's what that is down there. So just to clear up any confusion, we can comment all of that out and run it again. And it prints true because we created a new animal, and in our constructor, the constructor that matches this call, we set the has eyes of this particular animal, so animal 2 in this case, to true. And so when we print that out, that's what it gives us. All right, so now we can do animal 3, and we're going to use our other constructor this time. So we need to insert a boolean into our parameters there. This time we're going to do false. Okay, and then we're going to print out animal3's has eyes variable, and this one should be false. So let's comment this one out, and we get false because that's what we passed in. So we created a new animal and we put a boolean of false. The value of the boolean was false into the parentheses here. So Java looks at the constructor that you use and finds the one that you have for that class that matches that. If there's one that matches and it finds it, it's going to use it and do whatever instructions you give it. One thing you have to know about computers is that they're really dumb and they have no common sense, and they will do exactly what you tell them. If you tell them to divide by 0, that's what they're going to try to do. If you tell them to, add 1, that's exactly what it's going to do. So you have to make sure as the programmer that you're giving it good instructions. So just to clarify, uh, when we use these methods, we call that calling the method. We're calling the eat method. We're calling the sleep method. It's just like when someone calls your name. It gets your attention, and then if they tell, like, say your parents or your teacher tells you to, say your teacher tells you to um, wipe off your desk or something. Um, Hopefully you'll do that. So that's the same way in Java. You call the method, you call the object, and then the specific method on that object, and it'll do what you ask it to do. As the programmer, you have the control. You always have the control. All right. So now I'm going to talk to you guys about return types. So with methods, they can return information. And what that means is that it'll do what all the code that it needs to do, and at the very end, it'll spit out some information for the program to use. So it's similar to printing to the console, but it's not printing to the console. It's just giving it to the program, and I'll show you what I mean right now. So we have an integer variable here that is called number of legs. So what we can do is we can um, ask this animal how many legs it has. So do public. Now instead of void here, void means it doesn't return anything. And a lot of methods you create will be that way, but a lot of methods you create will return something. So we're going to do int because that's the data type of the variable we're asking about. And we're going to name it get number of legs. Okay. Now we don't have to do any special calculations for this, but we could if we wanted to, if we needed to, if it was something else. So say we wanted to get, um, say if it was twice the number of legs, we wanted to get the number of legs times 2. Well, we can do, it would be an integer, um, double legs, we'll call it double legs, equals number of legs, so the number of legs that this animal has times 2. Okay, now right now we have an error because Java is looking for a return statement. Because the return type is not void, it's looking for and it is an integer. It's looking for a return statement that returns an integer, and we haven't provided that yet. So if you look, it says return, add a return statement or change the return type to void. Whenever you have a squiggly line, you can always hover over it, and your software should give you some kind of clue as to what the error is. Some are more obvious than others. Now we need to add that return statement. So we want to return double legs. Okay, this is the variable that we just created here that did the calculation. We don't have to do the calculation again. We just return it. Okay, now our error went away because we have a return statement that returns an integer. This is double legs is an integer. So if we wanted, let's get rid of these animals. If we wanted, we can use that. Okay, so now the only thing that we're probably going to be doing for now is printing. So print line, and we're going to print animal dot get number of legs. And that method name is actually a little misleading. I probably should do get double legs or something, but we're going to roll with it. So after it does all this, Java's going to print out the result of this. So it's going to get the number of legs and multiply it by 2. Now, we have not set that anywhere. So let's see what it does. 0. Java just defaulted the integer to 0. So it returns 0 because 0 times 2 is 0. Now, if we want this to actually return something useful, we have to set number of legs to something. So we'll set it to, let's say 8. Now we should see 16. And that's what we get. We get 16 because we doubled the number of legs that it has and just returned it. It's that simple. We can return any data type. So we can return the color. So instead of integer or void, what do you think should be there? Well, um, color is a string, so it needs to be a string. Get color. And if you notice, my second word here is capitalized. Okay, and we're just going to return color. Okay, so let's try it out. We don't actually have a color for this animal. It's not set anywhere. So we can do this in another way. So here we set the number of legs there, but we could also in our constructors, we can do color equals, and I think we did green last time, so let's do white. Right? And yeah, because we use the default constructor, and so that's the default. So we'll do animal dot get color, and we'll run it, and we get white. And we got white because we set white in the constructor there. We set the color to white in the constructor here, and that's the constructor we used for this animal. If we did the other constructor, the color wouldn't be anything because we don't set it. So what happens if we did that? Let's do true. Interesting. Let's see. We get null. Null means it has no value. Like it's not even zero. Zero is a value. Null means no value. So if we don't set it, we'll get this, and this can cause problems. This is probably the most common error that I've ever gotten, are null pointer exceptions, which we'll go over later, what exceptions are. But for now, let's just copy this and paste it down here. And now it should be white because we use this constructor and it automatically sets these fields to have these values. And when we called that method, this get color method, it returns the color, the value of color, which we set here. And so what it's essentially doing is it's printing the result of this. Same thing here, printing the result of this. Okay. Now, methods can get way more complex. They can take in way more things than this. They can have different levels of access, different return types, and any combination of those. But they essentially boil down to just being a block of code that just does something. Usually you want to make your methods as simple as possible, and that's it. So let's do one more that has nothing to do with an animal, but just to show y'all the different things that you can do with methods and returning. So we'll do a public int get difference, and we'll take integer a and integer b. So now we're taking in two things. We have to have two pieces of information for this method to work. Okay. Now, what we want to do, what this method is going to do is subtract b from a and then return that number, which has to be an integer. Both of these have to be integers as well. So we can do return a minus b, and boom. Okay. Now, like I said, this is going to be kind of weird. So what we can do is we can print it directly, or we can store it in a variable. So we can do int, because remember, it's going to return an integer. We'll call it difference equals animal dot get difference. So we're calling this get difference method from the animal class, and we'll take let's say 9 and 5. All right. Now we're not using this variable right now, but what we can do is print it out. And we just put in difference here. We don't have to put 9 minus 5 or anything, because these numbers could very well be something else another time. They don't always have to be 9 minus 5. And we get 4 because that's what 9 minus 5 is. We could also just do that directly. So instead of storing it in a variable, let's cut that and paste it there. So we're going to print out the result of animal.getDifference with these two numbers. So that should still be exactly the same, 4. And we can change this. This can be 1 and this can be 16. And we should get negative 15. And we do, because this method, oops, does the work for us over and over and over again. We just code it one time and it works for us more than once. We get good value out of that. And that's why it's good to make methods out of code that you're going to need to execute multiple times. If it's something that you only need to do one time, it's not something, a lot of times you'll still want to put it in a method, sometimes for readability, but um, you don't have to, but it is good programming practice to to create methods for a code that is going to be repeated. Okay. So we've gone over methods, what they are, what they do, how to create them. We've talked about constructors, which are special methods, as well as got a little bit more background on this main method. And we know what void means now too. And we've spoken about the return keyword and the difference between return and printing. Printing goes here on this console or here. But returning goes to the program. The program takes that, and it's your job as the programmer to control the flow of what the program does with that. So if you have any questions, put them down in the comments. I'll respond to any comments that you guys might have. If you have any special requests for a video, let me know, and I'll try to make a video at my earliest convenience. Y'all have a good one.